So, mate, I've seen you've been cooking cheesecakes and posting a lot of food photos on Instagram lately.
Yeah, I figured I'd get into the cooking scene. Why not? Maybe I could be on MasterChef.
Do you have an apron that you wear?
No, I don't have an apron. I usually... No, I do wear clothes, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, but I don't have an apron.
Next time you're down here, we'll go to the Salamaker markets and I'll get you one of those Map of Tassie aprons that are floating around.
And where is the Map of Tassie on the apron?
It's on the apron, mate. It's kind of like about two-thirds of the way down the apron.
Yeah.
It's pretty popular tourist gift that comes out of the Salamaker markets. I think the stall holders proudly display them there. So you'd look pretty good in one. I'm thinking a pink one. Pink would definitely suit you.
They display the aprons, or they display their map of Tasmania?
It depends on which stall it is. Down the far end, they tend to, not even have the aprons on display. They're happily. But yes, that cheesecake you cooked looked pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. Choc mint cheesecake. I do have other flavors that I like to make. I seem to be, as I think the ads going around say, a Philly cheesecake enthusiast, and I like to make them. I don't sort of sit there and just eat them all. I usually make them for other people, and it's just nice to bring around to a dinner party or something. A nice raspberry white chocolate cheesecake, or choc mint, or what else have I made? A coffee cheesecake as well. It's a bit of fun, a bit challenging.
I do remember a promise that you made me to make me one when Susan and I were there, but we didn't get one. We just had to go out to a dessert cafe instead. So that was pretty cool, except they don't accept cash. So,
yeah.
They only accept cash. They don't accept EFTPOS.
Yeah, there's a tiny little sign above the register saying cash only, and businesses that only accept cash, just dodgy.
Yeah, one of the most prominent restaurants, or dessert restaurants in Melbourne, only accepting cash. But anyway, so the cheesecake looked pretty good. I'm expecting one when I get over there in a couple of weeks before our workshop.
Well, you did just kind of rock up at my house and expect to stay over, so I didn't have time to make you a cheesecake.
I'm glad I made it, man, because that congestion, the traffic was horrible. Good Friday, coming in to Melbourne, mate, that was just like ridiculous. It was terrible. Traffic was... That's about all I got to say.
But
it was horrible.
I'm sure the traffic was a lot better than still being in Norseman. Or would you rather be in Norseman or be stuck in Easter traffic?
No, look, I'm glad I'm home now, but it's debatable whether I prefer to stay in Norseman or drive through Melbourne Easter traffic. They're probably both as bad as each other, both as stressful, both as life-sapping and soul-sucking. But yeah, no, look, I'm glad to be home. It's been good. I've got home yesterday. Started to look at some of my images that I got on the trip. It took me about 4.5 hours, I think, to import all of the SD cards from multiple cameras, from drones, from GoPros, all that sort of thing. So it's going to take me a little while to kind of sort through all of those images and all through that content. It's going to be...
Do you have a count of how many images there are? A number?
No, I actually don't. I should probably go and have a look. But I'm estimating upwards of 6,000 easily.
Well, that's not too bad.
Not including the videos. So yeah, that's pretty... Yeah, I got a few images there to sort through.
Yeah, lots of shots of sharks and seals from your underwater adventures.
Yeah, man, definitely. That was probably one of the best things I've ever done. Went out with Calypso Charters. It was a really incredible experience to go out diving with them. Went out chasing sharks. In the days leading up to this, the shark activity started to build up again. It was actually when we were stuck in Norseman. We were laughing and actually joking with the lovely people at Calypso Charters that we're stuck here for a reason, because we're going to see record numbers when we finally do get over there to join them. And we ended up with 6 sharks on the day. Which is really awesome, and obviously prior to going on this trip, I think we discussed it in one of the previous podcasts that I had kind of set myself a bit of a challenge to do some marine and underwater photography. So the good people at Aquatech were very happy to support me with this as well, and kind of sent me some gear to use on this trip and on the project. So my first real experience with underwater photography, which I don't know what else could you put yourself into than going and diving with sharks and trying to take photos?
I think you did the sharks justice with just how scary a creature they can be and how just built for eating they are. Like some of those shots that you got with their jaws just wide open, like just hovering under the water. Yeah, they were really fantastic shots.
Definitely. And I think, like, obviously, I'd love to go back and do it again because I made a lot of mistakes technically with the actual techniques of it during the process. I think having your camera in an underwater housing kind of changes a few things. Firstly, being underwater changes the light. You're in a low light situation. Secondly, there was a lot of swell in the ocean, so we were moving around really bad. We were being thrown around in the cage a lot. Then obviously you're breathing through scuba gear. Using the gear, I kind of had to set it into manual focus and manually set a depth of field, those sort of things, prior to going down. I could have easily changed the ISO settings on the camera and kind of helped a lot to improve a couple of things within the shots that I did. But with the adrenaline going, worrying about being underwater, being thrown around by the swell, hitting the side of the cage, trying to stay down with the weight belts that kind of help you when you're staying down in scuba gear, through to just the pure adrenaline of having sharks literally a few meters from your head, not actually even closer, like they were a couple of meters away. I could have put my arm out at some stage and actually touched them. I didn't. So don't worry, wildlife people, I didn't. But like the whole experience obviously was really about trying to put myself into a situation and do something new for photography and try and experiment and play and learn something new. I think obviously we all get stuck in ruts of shooting the same thing time after time after time, and there's probably no need to. It's just a matter of maybe coming up with a bit of creativity and stepping outside of your comfort zones. And swimming with sharks with an underwater housing, breathing through scuba gear, being thrown around in a cage with a lot of swell, that definitely put me outside of my comfort zone.
I used an Aquatech as well when I was sailing around Whitsundays and didn't have sharks around me, but still just snorkeling through the reef and trying to dive down with flippers and drag this thing, which is still full of air and wants to float, and trying to drag that down. Not really being able to see what I'm taking a photo of on the back of the screen, but still trying to get lots of decent shots, and then bringing it back to the computer and having to deal with the white balance issues, deal with lighting issues and things like that. It's something that you really need to spend a lot of time on to master. And I do have a lot of respect for people who do it for a living and get these phenomenal shots of waves or just underwater, even underwater portraits and things. They're just really well done. And it does take a lot of skill to learn. And yeah, it's worth giving a try if you've got the opportunity to go out there and try and take shots underwater with an underwater camera. Of course, I wouldn't just,
Well, definitely. I think like we've obviously had the opportunity. I've got multiple GoPros, and I've had the opportunity to use them, and you could just literally shoot video if you wanted to and pull still frames out of it. But where's the challenge in that? For me, I really did want to kind of do something new and experiment and try a new style of photography. And underwater photography is definitely something that I would love to give more of or put more time towards and actually really master. Diving with the sharks, as I said, I don't think there's too many more things that could potentially put you in a out of your comfort zone than that. And yeah, I definitely made a few mistakes with that first dive that I'd love to go back. I got some really good shots, and they were good, I suppose, for the experience level I have of doing underwater photography with fast motion, moving sharks, all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I would love to go back and do it again, because I think right now I've probably learnt quite a lot from that experience that I could really go and apply to it again and hopefully capture something new. But at the same time, I did get some really good shots that I was happy with. I mean, the shark coming at me head on with its mouth open, it was something that's probably really unique. It did really well on Instagram. It did really well on Calypso Charter's Instagram account as well, and it's also done very well on some other accounts like Discover Sharks and those sort of things. So it was kind of a unique shot. So I think maybe everything happened for a reason on that trip, and I was in the right place at the right time. So yeah, again, I'd love to go back and give it a try again. So definitely something worth experimenting with and playing with.
You'll have to practice a bit in the harbour at Hobart. Just go diving under there to see what you can take photos of in the murky water.
No.
No?
No. I think I'll pass on that one.
Find some tyres or shopping trolleys or something you can take photos of.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer to head to warmer waters. I'd definitely like to experiment with some surf photography. I got in the water around Esperance and tried there. Really tried to, but the the waves just weren't curving at all. You know, the typical shots where the top of the waves is actually folding over and creates the arc or but I just couldn't get any waves like that. Where I did see some though, I probably would have drowned, I reckon, because the water was absolutely crazy intense, and I reckon I would have got sucked out to sea going out that far to where they were. But yeah, I'd love to give that a go as well. Obviously swimming with sea lions, that was really cool. They move so fast and they're so playful. They actually interact with people, so they come up and they literally will put their face in front of the camera for you. They're happy to play with you. We were in some really rough water on the day that we were out there doing that, so again, probably didn't get the volume of shots I would have liked to, but I definitely got some good ones and some that are going to make the actual trip worthwhile. So
you're glad to be back home now?
I am glad to be back home. I'm very glad to be back home. I'm only home for a couple more weeks, and then we're on the road again for a fair part of May. So, yeah, it's going to be, I'm glad to be home. I've got quite a bit of work to catch on for clients to keep them happy as well. And then next month, we start our workshops again. So after Phillip Island and then Cradle Mountain and a few other things in between as well.
Yeah, looking forward to the Phillip Island one coming up. That's only a couple of weeks away now, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
2 weeks. 2 weeks I land in Melbourne.
Yeah, we've still got a couple of spots left if anyone wants to get in last minute and jump on board with Phillip Island or Cradle Mountain.
Definitely, yes. A couple of spots left for both workshops. Obviously, Phillip Island is the 7th of May.
4th
to the 7th of May. I better make sure I'm there on time. 4th to the 7th of May.
When are your flights booked again?
Yeah, that's it. And then Cradle Mountain from the 18th to the 21st of May. So yeah, we've got a couple of spots left there. It's going to be a whole heap of fun and a lot of learning, a lot of laughs, a lot of awesome locations, a lot of really cool spots, and a great bunch of people as well that have already registered. So yeah, a couple of spots left. So if you're interested, projectrawcast.com/workshops to go and check those out. We'd like to say a massive thank you to Nisi Filters Australia for their ongoing support of Project RAWcast. Nisi Australia have very quickly become the market leader in Australia for their filters, not just through the quality of their product, but also through their incredible aftermarket support and their support of the photography community as a whole. Both myself and Kieran use Nisi simply because of the fact they are the best quality filters on the market. Now, Nisi are offering our listeners a 5% discount for any purchases made at nisifilters.com.au by using the coupon code PROJECTRAWCAST at the checkout. So that's all one word, Project RAWcast. This can be used for any purchases of any amount for any Nisi products. So I'd like to say a massive thank you again to Nisi Filters Australia for their ongoing support of Project RAWcast.
So we've got quite a controversial topic coming up in the podcast, so that we're going to chat about now.
Yes, we do. We do have some controversial stuff. I think a topic that's really divisive within probably more so the Instagram community than the entire photography community. I think obviously people are so passionate about Instagram and kind of like to still believe in this romanticized fairy tale that Instagram is this pure platform that it was when it first was around, which unfortunately since Facebook bought it, it is not. But yeah, look, I'm talking about automation and bots as well on Instagram and what those two different things are. And I think in marketing sense and actually in a technical sense, they are an entirely different thing. So been a lot of bad media, I think, around both of these. And I think people coming out and kind of stating their opinion about what these are. I think probably a bit of education might be the way to go here in teaching people what they are, what results they achieve, how they achieve them, and why people are using them as well.
That's one thing as well. I think there's a lot of people who may know what they are as well, or what automation can do as well, but still have their own opinions of them and what they think is right. But sometimes it doesn't really matter what their moral views are on it. It's still that problem is, as you said, it's not sort of a problem in the photography community, but the Instagram community. But a lot of people kind of see them as one and the same. And that's one of the problems that this issue is creating, I suppose, is that it's taking an Instagram problem and making it a photography problem.
Yeah, I think a lot of this issue comes down to competition between people as well. Everybody wants to achieve success through their photography without actually doing any genuine marketing of themselves other than posting to Instagram. There is a genuine belief that organically earning your audience, all of this sort of thing, is the way forward. And look, I'm not going to doubt this, and this is not an opinion in any way. But the simple fact is Instagram is now a marketing platform. It is a marketing platform first and foremost. Facebook bought it to make a ton of money off it. So while people want to kind of believe that that's not the case, it really is genuinely the case. And I think in the early days of Instagram, it was far easier to grow an Instagram account than it is today. Okay, the sea of traffic on Instagram makes it very hard for people to now stand out. In the old days of Instagram, it was very, very easy to grow upwards of 1,000 followers a week. These are true, genuine numbers. These days, if you're growing at 300 to 400 followers a week, you're probably achieving good success still. But the thing is, I think the competition between people and between people who, I suppose, some people who want to protect their commercial interests, then there's other people who don't actually really see Instagram as the fairy tale wonderland that I think some people like to think it as. And I think what we can probably do here is actually just give some facts. This isn't a promotion in any way of any product, any service, any individual method. What I would personally like to do is give a bit of education about what each of the methods of automation do, and also how they vary to what the average person sees as a bot. I know you've got a personal opinion about all of this, Kieran. So
yeah, I mean, I've got opinions and views, and I do try and see it from both sides as well. I tend to be not so much a fence sitter. I'm happy to say what my opinion is, but I do try and see it from both sides. And I understand where a lot of people will come from when they do get really fired up about automation and bots. And it is something that I have looked into as well. I even sort of went to some of the services that offer it back in my pre-10K days just to see what it could do and what it was all about. And after a few days of just looking at it, it was something that I decided, no, this isn't how I want to grow my business. But I could see how useful it could be, how much work it could actually do. But yeah, how about we do go through some of the facts, and then we'll also maybe even chat about what some of the arguments are for people who sort of maybe see it as a moral decision rather than just a marketing or business decision.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so the two terms that I'm going to put out here, one is automation and one is bots. So first and foremost, automation in a marketing sense is basically methods of producing automated tasks on your account to produce long-term genuine followers or genuine audio. You earn a genuine audience and long-term genuine high engagement from those people. Now, one thing here that I have to point out is people who use automation still need to have the people who follow them press that follow button. So the people who choose to follow those people are still following them by choice. What automation in its marketing sense is a way of putting your account in front of as many people as possible. That's marketing. That's basic business marketing. So automation in that method, in that regard, there's a few different ways that we'll talk about here of how they're used. But realistically, automation is all about announcing your account to as many people as possible. In terms of marketing, it's kind of like door knocking, running radio ads, running TV ads, doing mail outs. They're all the exact same techniques and the exact same ways of introducing your account to people. So what we'll talk about here now, so there's three major ways of using automation as a whole. So first and foremost, we'll talk about commenting. So typically when you do this, you would hook your account up to a platform that is connected to what's known as the Instagram API. Now, the API is the software service that runs in the back end of Instagram that allows third-party applications to connect to it. Now, Instagram have a specific set of functions that they have allowed the API to use. One of them is following. One of them is liking. One of them is commenting. These are all actual tasks that Instagram have developed in their API and have allowed third third-party applications to tap into. So when you hook up to these services, you can then select different ways of creating automation. One is commenting, one is the follow and unfollow method, one is liking targeted posts. So first and foremost, commenting is all about creating automated comments on a specific set of posts, whether they be based on targeting hashtags, or whether they be based on targeting specific followers, be based on targeting people in a specific region, or be based on followers of other followers. So for example, you could load in somebody's account today, and the people that are following those people, you would then be targeting those for this particular purpose. Now, commenting has a very bad reputation, I suppose, because quite often these comments, you can generally tell that they're automated. I've seen examples this week of black and white photos where somebody says, nice color. The comments generally don't make sense. And this isn't always the case, because you can make comments that seem automated that aren't actually automated. That's the type of thing, the comment generally won't match the tone of the conversation, or the comment won't match the tone of the image itself.
And it can be quite bad as well if someone's like posted a picture of their maybe a family member who's not quite well and like said a sad comment, and then they get a bot comment that says, "Oh, love this, great work," or something, and it's like, it's a little insensitive.
Exactly, and that's exactly what auto commenting. Now, I'm not saying that that's always going to go, because quite often the comments are generic enough, and they're targeted to specific hashtags. So, for example, you're really targeting very high quality landscape hashtags, for example, where anybody who posts on that particular hashtag, what the automation system does is it polls that hashtag every now and then, and it looks for the people who are posting on that hashtag, and then we'll go and leave an automated comment. Now, these automated comments can either be they're generally just a whole list. Just imagine a spreadsheet. You fill out 100 columns on the spreadsheet with a different comment, you load it into this system, and it will then just randomly pick one of those and apply that to that particular post. So that's commenting. Now, in terms of actual results, we're looking at anywhere from around a 2 to 4% overall yield. And now what I mean by an overall yield is the amount of traffic you send out via this method. 2 to 4% of people will actually choose to then follow you as a result of that comment that you're leaving. Again, as I say, we're not discussing opinions on this. That is the facts and the results. That's the figures of how this works, okay? So quite often people complain about this, and completely understandable why they do. Next method, typically with automation, is going to be the follow and unfollow method. Now, people use this a lot, and the reason they use this a lot is because it is highly successful. In terms of automation, this is the single method that is going to deliver you the best results. If you are to choose to use automation, this is the single best way to actually get a lot of followers. We're talking anywhere from 15 to 20% average across the amount of traffic you send out. And I'll discuss traffic limits in a second. 15 to 20% of people choose to follow you. They actually physically then come back to you and go, I will follow this account. That is the success rate of this. Now,
so if you follow 100 people, about 15 or 20 will actually follow you back.
Absolutely, that's the numbers. So in terms of this, and we're kind of talking, I'll give some specifics about the API and the way that these tools currently work. In terms of following and unfollowing, what will happen is generally, again, the exact same method as commenting. People will target a very specific hashtag or a specific user or a specific geographical region. They'll find users via the hashtag, for example. So if you're posting on hashtag Project RAWcast, you could then all of a sudden, I won't say all of a sudden, but you could then follow everybody who posts on that specific hashtag. Now, generally what happens, because this is the follow-unfollow method, is after a set period of time, so say 24 hours after, what people will then do is have these automation systems unfollow anybody who either is not following them back, or they could even unfollow people who have chosen to follow them, depending on how the bots are set. I'm not going to say the bot, the automation is set up. Because again, this in some way, people consider this turning your account into a bot, but ultimately it's still in marketing sense and in the real world marketing, it's not a bot, it's automation. With this particular method, this is the thing that I see quite often that people are really annoyed about, because what happens is they will lose a third of their followers. So in a 24-hour period, if 100 people follow them, they may lose 30 of them. So they really only gain 70 followers over that day. And a lot of that happens because of this automated activity that's flowing through the API or flowing through Instagram, where the automation is set up to have a specific set of rules, and they either unfollow them if they haven't followed back, or unfollow them even if they have followed back. So that particular method, it is the single best method in terms of delivering actual results.
Effective method.
The most effective, absolutely. In terms of actual results, at the end of the day, people who use this method, I have seen and heard of people gaining upwards of 5,000 followers per week through this method. Now, you have to remember that those 5,000 people are people who are actually choosing to follow them. So what the people who use the follow and unfollow method are doing is they are basically saying, hey, I'm over here, come and look at me. I've got some awesome images of a cat drinking out of its bowl. Come and follow me because you might like my content. That's basically what this is. And if people then choose off their own back to go and press that follow button, that is a result for that person who's using that method. So those two methods there are probably the two that annoy the people the most. Follow and unfollow is definitely the one that is most effective in delivering results in terms of marketing potential for a long-term audience. And the thing I think you need to think about here is those people who choose to follow you are very, very likely to engage with you if they like your content. So in terms of engagement rates, long-term, people using these methods tend to find their engagement rates are phenomenal. That's probably the single best way to use to explain this. When you have people who've chosen to follow you because they like your content, they will be very likely to engage with you long-term. So those two methods there are two of the three. Third method is liking a specific set of targeted posts. Now, this is basically a highly targeted method of, I suppose, interacting with content with people who are very likely to be producing the same style of content as you. So with this one, probably the most common method of doing this is by targeting specific hashtags. So think of the 30 hashtags that you use today. So cats of Instagram, those types of things. You would then be liking specific posts on those hashtags based on a set of rules. You can like posts that have got a minimum of 20 likes that have been posted to a specific hashtag. You can like posts only of people who have a certain amount of followers on a specific hashtag. So in terms of targeting, this is possibly one of the most effective targeting methods, but it still delivers you a very low set of results as compared to the follow and unfollow method. The follow unfollow is without a doubt the single most effective method of doing this, but liking targeted posts is all about being very specific in your targeting. You're targeting very specific people who are likely to be producing content that is very, very similar to yours. That is how you would do it to be effective anyway. Obviously, you can target any hashtag you like. You can just go and target beautiful destinations, earth pics, any of those you like, and really kind of, just be targeting whatever. When you like this when you use this type of automation, 2 to 5% overall yield. So effective rate of 2 to 5% overall total. So if you are liking 100 posts, you may only get 2 to 5 people total that will come back and actually follow you. So just imagine the actual technical element of this. In a sea of people who like your posts, do you actually go through those people, click on their accounts and go and look at them?
Some people I do, some especially for followers and stuff I do. But I mean, I do get a lot of likes. It's not a bad problem to have, but yeah, probably don't go through and check everyone that's liked my work. But that's where, like you're saying with this targeting thing as well, it's one of the effective ways to actually use this liking thing is to only target people who tend to get less than, say, 100 or 50 likes on their photo anyway, so that yours stands out more.
That's exactly what it is.
So it's no point liking or setting it up to like people who get 10,000 likes or 2,000 likes even, because you're not going to get seen.
That's exactly what it is as well, is there are a certain subset of users on Instagram who are producing content that are very likely to actually care about who's liking their posts. So, and that is how you get seen by using this method, is you're targeting a very specific subset of people who do this. You can broaden your rules entirely. I mean, but I'm just giving the information about why these methods are actually genuinely effective and why people do them. Now, at the current rate on Instagram, there is 80 interactions per hour allowed to be fed through the Instagram API. So Instagram allow a certain amount of traffic to be fed through their API through these tools, okay? So just think about that for a minute. Instagram actually allowed this activity to happen. There are actually specific software rules and software code, the API that sits in the back end of Instagram that allows these third-party applications to connect to it. So to get an application onto the Instagram API, you get vetted. So if I was today to go and create an application, I go and apply to Instagram to have access to the API. I get given a key, basically an API key, a set of authorization codes, those types of things that I use in my application. So imagine the application to be the automation system. That system is then vetted by Instagram. Instagram will look at the activity that happens on those API keys. They actually check this. So for me, when I look at and hear the media coverage that's kind of coming out about this, and trying not to be opinionative about this too much, if Instagram wanted to shut this down today, they could stop the fire hose of traffic by pulling the API keys from these third-party applications that are allowing this to happen. They've never done this. They've never done this. Instagram allow this much activity. There are 80 interactions per hour allowed on the API. So if you were today, you wanted to go and follow and unfollow people, think of this as 40 people you're allowed to follow and 40 people that you're allowed to unfollow per hour. Okay, so across a 24-hour period of time, 40 times 24, or even 80 times 24 following and then a day of unfollowing. That's how these tools are being used. Now, the morals of this, whether it's right or wrong, for me, when I look at the people who complain about this, more often as not, it's people who see each other as competition, always. What I say to this in a business marketing sense, Instagram are allowing this to happen. So these are actually effective methods of business marketing because Instagram as a platform allows this to happen. When people choose to follow you off their own back, they choose to press that follow button. No matter how you've done it, that is a genuine follower that you have earned. Now, whether you earn it via marketing yourself, whether you earn it via an organic method of posting and hoping that your images get found or not, that's two different things altogether. What it is, simply, is this is a very, very effective method of marketing. It is a highly, highly effective marketing. And people will continue to do this. I know of automation systems that have been around since 2013 on Instagram. I know of automation systems on Twitter that have been around since 2007. 2007, so we're talking 10 years plus. There are platforms around that have existed for years, and these are genuine marketing tools.
I think people they pretty well know what's going on with this. It's nothing really new except for maybe the actual percentages of how effective they are. I mean, people know that you can use them for commenting, follow, unfollow, liking, and everything like that for automation. The problem, I think, really is not from people getting ahead from this. It's that when you get a like or a comment or someone follows you, you see someone else at the end of that. You see a person actually doing the same thing, going to your account, looking and choosing to like. But the problem with the automation is you're not even seeing the photos, you're not seeing the feed, you're not seeing the name of the person. This is just a program that's running through doing this to generate marketing for you when the person on the other side of that sees that as a genuine person liking or commenting or having a real interaction with their work. And when they find out that that's not what's happening, that's where the frustration comes in. And they expect that as a social media platform, that they are genuine interactions between people, not between a system that's going through a set of rules to comment and like and follow and unfollow. And yes, you can do this by yourself, just with man hours as well. But that's one way to generate more marketing for yourself, is to actually sit there, go through hashtags, double tap on each thing and or each photo, actually see it. If you see a nice photo, comment on it, like it. If you see someone whose stuff you like, follow them. You could even do it in a more sort of purely marketing point of view and go through people, just follow. The next day, go through all your followers, people that you're following, and follow. You can do this manually as well and do the same kind of things that this automation does. But I think even if you're doing that, it still seems like genuine man hours and hard work to build up your account. And the automation can seem like kind of a cop-out of just making it easier for yourself to generate this stuff. And it seems less transparent than, say, a marketing campaign where it says it's an ad, like, this is an ad, do you like my stuff? But for the automation, it's not a genuine interaction between people. And that's where I know I chose not to do it, because I saw that and I thought, I don't want people to be seeing me as just an automated thing that's going through trying to get attention for myself. I want any interactions I have to be from me, or my wife was quite good in building up my account as well, and she would go through and comment or like as well. But like, it's still man hours that are building up a business. So I think that's where the main issue that people have, besides other things of competition and stuff. But in terms of the automation, it's that lack of human interaction that's really bothering people.
Absolutely. I think, like, I see that point of view as well, and I kind of hear that. The thing that is probably more dominant within the photography industry is people seeing each other as competition, and I'm sure you would admit that as well.
Oh, definitely.
Is that a lot of this comes down to competition. It's the same thing with sponsored posts. People who use sponsored posts are seen as cheating because it's not organic. But yet the platforms that people use, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all offered sponsored posts. They all offer ways of promoting yourself. As soon as that promotion of yourself comes into your business model, you are seen as doing something that other people aren't. And that is, in many people's eyes, cheating. Now, as you mentioned as well, having, say, your wife run your account. I know of, within the Australian community, many people who use marketing services who are real people to do this. They're frowned on as well, because all of a sudden it's seen as that person whose pretty picture it is on their account isn't the person that's actually commenting and liking. It's funny what people see as soon as there is a competitive element built into this. And Instagram is big business in the eyes of many people. There is a very established bunch of people within the Australian, New Zealand, American, UK, European market of influencers who I know of very, very well, who in the very early days of their account were using not only automation but also fake bots. And we'll get to those in a sec. Mm-hmm. But now frown on it. So it's kind of funny watching, in many ways, the hypocrisy that comes within the community around these topics. As soon as there is a marketing element involved in getting a leg up or getting ahead of other people, people will frown on it. Now, as we said, we've spoken about automation there. In terms of bots are generally the things that are considered as things that you buy, as in, okay, I want an extra 10,000 followers on my account right now. I can go along to specific websites, specific apps, whatever it is, put in an order, and somebody who operates a network of accounts that are set up entirely for this purpose will then go and tell those accounts to follow that person and stay following that person. Same thing with engagement as well. You can buy engagement, which looks like engagement because it boosts your numbers. The downside to this now is the one statistic that I still personally do not know of that you can really fake is your post reach. Now, your post reach is people who are actually looking at your images through the Instagram application. Now, remembering that Instagram as an application, you can, as a mobile app builder, build in statistics to specific things within an app to see how many page views a specific page or a specific item within that app has. So these statistics of post reach are built around real people on the Instagram app scrolling through and seeing an image. So post reach is the single now defining factor within statistics of the success of an image, of how it ranks on hashtags or how any of those things happen. And that single figure of post reach now is something that I think when you look at people's statistics, you'll see a very, very close element of the number of people who've liked an image and their post reach, okay? Because that generally you'll find, say, anywhere from 30 to 50% of people would be a maximum number. I mean, you kind of, that'd be the difference between likes and engagement. That's pretty good if you're doing that. I've seen bigger numbers, but you know, they're smaller accounts as well who actually produce amazing content. That when you're using bots, as in the fake methods of engagement, those two statistics will be very close together. The number of people who engage with your post and your post reach, because those bots don't account for post reach. They're not actually using the Instagram account. What they are is a thing that's programmed through the API to look at an image and just create that automated action or activity of liking a post. And so when you're using bots, it's very, very easy to tell. If you want to look at, or if you're a business and you're, say, looking to work with somebody who's a photographer, you can ask for their stats. If their stats don't match up, it's very, very easy. And there's so many tools like Social Blade, which has come into the media's attention recently, which has been around for a long time, that kind of shows certain things about, you know, the activity of following and unfollowing people. That's great. You follow a growth over time. That's all well and good. But the stats that you cannot see publicly, that can only be generated through the Instagram app, that will actually give you these figures. And it's very, very easy to tell when people are using these fake accounts or bots to actually do this. And I've seen all sorts of reports over the last week about how to identify these accounts, how to do this. It's funny to think about how this has all kind of come into the media so recently, but yet it's been part of social media marketing for so many years now. With automation in a marketing sense can be seen as a way of a genuine way of earning or gaining a highly targeted audience that will actually engage with you organically over time. So they will organically choose to engage with you. With bots, that is fake. Okay, they're fake. It's you're going along to somebody who's used an automated method of creating bulk amounts of accounts and asking them to basically boost your numbers in a way that is not true, I suppose, if you like. So that's the difference between the two. And I think Instagram is no longer this playground for people who think it's pure. It's not. Facebook bought it as a business. It is a business, and many people treat it as a business. And I think when I hear and see stories, it's those people that treat it as a business the most that are actually the most vocal about this as well. So in terms of actually educating people, hopefully people will understand a little bit from what I've just said about what these tools actually do for people. Maybe rather than just listening and reading things in the media, maybe go and do a bit of research themselves and actually see what they generally do, because the results these things deliver is incredible. And while Instagram allows this traffic on their API, grants access to these tools, these are going to continue to be valid forms of marketing for anybody who chooses to use them. And just remember, business is business. So if you choose to use it, that's your right. That is your business, your way of doing things. Just because somebody says it's wrong doesn't mean to say that it is actually wrong. And quite often, when you look at the people who are saying this is wrong, it's those that are trying to protect their own business interests as well.
But I think these APIs they allow access to the APIs is because of other third parties that do expect people to maybe use a desktop service to go through and manage their Instagram account, but they're still doing it in a manual, genuine way, as in going and liking and commenting and not doing it in an automated way. So I think that's where these methods were allowed in the first place, but they've just been taken over by means that more effective or more automated. Not saying that it's wrong, but saying that it's just use that method or that loophole to create something that works more effectively.
Yeah, I don't believe that, because these tools have been on the market for many years. If Instagram wanted to get rid of them, they could today turn off the API access to those tools. It's simple as that. What they could do today is have a team of people within Instagram go and sign up for these services, go and allow traffic to happen through a specific account, track the IP address of the interactions that are happening, just remembering that all of this is very, very easily trackable. So an IP address is generally tied, or a whole heap of IP addresses will be tied to this that actually produce the activity. They could track that activity, basically track any activity that's coming from those individual IP addresses, find out who's using them, either ban those accounts, which simply I've still yet to see an actual terms of service that says these are against terms of service, or quite simply, all they've got to do is click a button and turn off the API access to these tools. That is how easily, if they wanted to do it, they could do it. There are business models that exist around this, though, and whether you like it or not, Instagram is now a business marketing platform, and these tools are actually being used for genuine methods of business marketing.
But they're not, like I've said before as well, like Instagram aren't arbiters of what's morally right and what's wrong, and they're just going to see it from what could potentially be damaging their app or their platform in terms of their ability to make money. And if these things aren't affecting their money-making abilities, then there's no reason for them to turn them off.
Absolutely. And that's very true as well.
But, I mean, yeah, it's not a decision of morals to say, no, we want to keep Instagram pure, because who cares? It's not. It's an individual choice about what is right and what's wrong. And that's something that we're talking about. It's not saying that automation is right or wrong. That's a opinion based on every individual about how to use it or not use it. But I think one point that both of us do want to get across is that don't let people using these methods affect your enjoyment of photography or Instagram. Because if someone is using this method to get ahead, get a bunch of engagement, a bunch of likes, a bunch of comments, that's not stopping other people from seeing your stuff. That's not making you lose any real business or views on your account. People can still follow you and other people and still like your work and like other people's work. It's not stepping over you to get higher. They're just using other methods that you may not agree with, but that doesn't make you any more right or wrong than them.
Absolutely. I think everybody's going to have their own best interests at heart. People who complain about this are complaining because they are not being seen as much as they believe they should be. My question there is if these methods didn't exist, are those people more likely to be seen, or will they just find something else to complain about as well? And this is not to be rude to any individual, but business is business, and no matter what happens, business will always exist. Everybody is going to have their own personal interests at heart, and quite simply, be protecting their own interests. And that's exactly what is happening, and that is exactly what a lot of the media coverage has been about over the past couple of weeks. There is no right or wrong with this. There are people's personal beliefs and people's own moral decisions, and people need to make their own moral decisions to suit themselves. When it comes to business, people will do what it takes to earn money. That is exactly what will happen. No matter what it is, there will always be this. The photography community is such a competitive, cutthroat industry that this causes stress for people and takes the interest away from what people actually got into photography for in the first place, which is the art, the fun of producing images, the fun of doing that. There will always be business models around this, and people will always clash. As I say, people who use sponsored posts are currently seen as doing something that's wrong. That is a wrong way. That is not the good way to look at this in any way. If some person chooses to do one thing and it gets them ahead, everybody else has the same decision-making ability. They can do that. There's nothing stopping them from doing that except for their own personal choices. When business is business, you just got to think it's a whole different ball game altogether, and people will be very passionate about protecting their own personal interest. So hopefully, as I say, I mean, this is not an opinionative, or hopefully not too much of an opinionative issue for me. I hope that somebody's actually learnt something about why and what it is that these things are doing. As I say, automation is a genuine marketing method to develop a long-term, highly engaged audience. Bots are fake. And this is just, there's a huge differentiation between the two things.
Tassie Grammer and I would like to thank F-Stoppers for sponsoring this podcast. Whenever I want to know what's going on in the world of photography, I go to fstoppers.com. Not only do they provide great news articles and tips for photographers like me, they also have a fantastic range of photography and post-processing tutorials. I personally have watched the Cityscape tutorial with Elia Liccardi, and I was blown away by the amount of information and production value of the tutorial. There was over 15 hours of content, from setting up in amazing locations all over the world to the post-processing and the final image. F-Stoppers are offering our listeners a 10% discount on these amazing Elia Liccardi tutorials by using the discount code RAWcast at checkout. So if you want to take a leap in your understanding of photography and post-processing, head to fstoppers.com and get a 10% discount on Elia Liccardi tutorials using the discount code RAWcast. Thanks again to F-Stoppers for supporting this show. And there are much more important things in the real world of photography that are going on that we should discuss as well. We've had some updates on Tasmanian tourism, or anything going on down there in the Isle.
Yeah, look, I've held off for a couple of months now, waiting for a few things to happen. We obviously have had a lot of inquiries come through, people asking for updates. We've been pretty quiet since the episode that I did happen to discuss this, and I've got to be honest, not a lot has happened, and this is actually probably a bigger issue than something actually happening. My last interaction with the head of Tourism Tasmania here was that a social media policy was going to be released to the public. It is going to be made available within their corporate website. This is 2 months ago. We're talking February the 15th when I received that email. Off the back of that email, I took it as progress. This is something that's probably going to be beneficial to the industry as a whole, and it hasn't happened. And this is something I think now that, I think I'm going to start. I've already been asking the questions via email. I've so far had my emails completely ignored. So look, the simple fact is, right now there is no social media policy, and we have been promised a social media policy by the CEO of Tourism Tasmania. It has not been made public. It has not been developed in any way. It has not been shown to anybody. So for me, that push is happening. Now, the last week, a similar issue was raised with Launceston Airport and the Northern Tasmanian Tourism Board. Some of the photographers in Tasmania were a little bit upset about, but upon actually getting to the bottom of the facts and getting to the bottom of the story, the airport up there has actually sought permission from a specific set of people to use the images within the airport in the same way that they were being used in Hobart, but as done with permission. So this is at least progress, and at least somebody doing the right thing by the photography industry. I think that's something that probably should have happened in the first place here without any question whatsoever. But look, as I say, there hasn't really been any progress, and it's probably a bit sad to be able to say that, because since the initial complaint, I think the people that were actually involved in this have been very quiet off the back of the promise of getting this social media policy published, defining what their social media platforms actually are. So is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? Are they claiming that Tint is a social media account? What they will do with the images? Whether they believe they own copyright of the images, whether they'll modify those images. These types of things are things that we're still waiting for answers from, and maybe it's time to start applying that pressure again and actually getting it, because as I say, we've heard nothing for the last 2 months about this at all. And this is, as you said, probably one of the bigger issues in photography today is the way that photography as a whole is being devalued. I think touching on some of the complaints that I have personally heard over the last week, I think people working for $120 to $180 a day over the last few years have probably impacted on the photography industry far more than some of the things that have actually come out in the last week. Now, this is just an opinion. These people aren't evil. They're doing what it takes to put food on their table. But ultimately, tourism as a whole needs to start valuing photography. It needs to start valuing photographers because it's our images that actually sell many of the destinations that's coming through. So, as I say, that's the update. Probably a bit sad to actually not be able to give more of an update. I'm going to keep pushing for this because it's what we've been promised. And it's what the CEO of Tourism Tasmania has directly in writing promised to deliver us. We've had many media inquiries. I probably prefer to control my own voice myself rather than actually letting a third-party service do it. So in my own words, that's exactly what's happened. We've kind of held off on interviews from many media organisations over the last couple of weeks who've been pushing to who have assured me that they would personally love to be involved in making sure this happens as well. And I've held off in the hope that we can actually get the result directly as photographers with the people who have caused this problem in the first place.
And I think, like you were saying, they've asked permission of the photographers before displaying it. It's almost like fake, or not fake, but it's not real progress, because asking permission to use it doesn't still value what the photographers are doing. It's just kind of like I don't know, it's not really doing anything just for asking permission. It's still not giving the photographers anything for their work. It's nice to be able to be asked first. At least it gives people a chance to say yes or no. But as you were saying, like, people working for very little in terms of photography, and sometimes that number may seem like a good amount for a day's work, but in photography, if you're running a business, you can't run a business from making that little a day when you're there. You may be on location for 24 hours a day for an entire week or a couple of weeks. It's just not enough to, especially if you have to pay your own expenses as well, it's not enough to really make it as a photography and viable business.
No, absolutely. I think there's a whole probably generation now of photographers who have basically allowed for this sort of industry rate to happen, which in itself has allowed for the type of thing within the tourism industry that we are complaining about today to also occur. Is the value of their content and the value of their time has completely and entirely devalued an entire industry. There is so much free stuff being given out, so much free content being delivered to people who should be paying for it. Unfortunately, there's so many people that themselves as photographers have either been forced to or have willingly accepted pennies on the dollar for what they're worth. And this is something that ultimately I think the whole industry should be looking at themselves. Am I part of this issue? Am I part of the reason why people aren't earning good money? The fact that your images can be used for free in a commercial setting in an airport is part of the problem. Why are people not being paid for this? And ultimately, I think there's a bigger question to be asked here is who is it that's allowed for this to happen? The standardization of the tourism industry is causing a problem for the entire photography community. It's probably a little bit off topic to what I originally wanted to discuss in terms of just what's actually happened here and giving an update. But ultimately, this is something I think that's probably bigger than any of these other little Instagram issues as a whole, because this impacts on everybody as a photographer, not just those who want to make it on Instagram. Stop charging nothing or next to nothing for your time, and people won't expect stuff for free all the time, and people won't take stuff for free all the time. That's my opinion. And again, I'd like to continue that discussion and have other photographers continue that discussion between themselves as well, because I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of people out there who today are not getting paid or have not got jobs in the photography community that should be paying them what they're actually worth.
I think a problem could also be is that not all influencers or Instagrammers are doing this as a full-time job, and the thought of like an extra $100 a day, that's nice on top of what they're already making on their full-time job, and so they see it as just a bit of extra cash. But that's the problem. It's taking the value down of what photographers actually do. Tourism's kind of like a wedge in the photography industry that is breaking apart what photographers in other genres are being able to charge as well. So it's not just a problem for Instagram or tourism. It could have wider ranging implications in photography as a whole.
It's such a cutthroat part of photography, the tourism sector, but yet it's also one of the lowest value in terms of actual earning potential there is within photography. And the reason that low value is there is because people have allowed it to happen. People have been willing to work for that much money. That in itself is a problem. So I think as photographers, we can make that change. People can make that change. People can look at themselves and say, why aren't I being paid what I'm worth? If you've been willing to work for that little money, potentially you're part of the problem. That's my opinion. Look, again, as I say, tourism is undervaluing photography as a whole, and I think that's something that the photography community should be standing up for and saying this is not right.
I'll just say it is the tourism side that needs to change as well, because they need to make the first move to really paying photographers what they are worth, because it's hard for the photographers to turn down offers of anything if they are just struggling to make money and they're just trying to get enough money to put food on the table. As you're saying, it's not, they can't just sit back and say, no, I won't accept this, because there will be someone who will just take it. And the tourism industry needs to focus on what's important for this industry of photographers, rather than just really focusing on the photographers saying no to less money, because sometimes you may not have a choice.
Absolutely. As I say, though, those industry rates have been caused by people willing to accept that and not standing up and saying, no, we should be paid more. As I say, there's been no real updates here in Tasmania, which is really sad, because I was hoping to genuinely work towards getting some sort of positive outcome for everybody by now, within 2 months. We're still waiting for that social media policy to be done, and hopefully photographers will start to be respected for what they're actually doing for the tourism industry as a whole.
Cool.
So, mate, this is probably something that I think you may know a little bit more about than me, because this just confuses my eyes when I look at this sort of stuff. So in Photoshop and in Lightroom, there are a few sliders: luminance, saturation, and hue. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing about which is which. Can you give us a bit of an insight into which is which? Because when I slide the green hue slider around, mate, I can't see one bit of difference.
I figured you might handball this over to me, since, I mean, as colorblind, you only see in black and white, so color can be a bit of an issue for you.
Mate, barely black and white. I think most stuff's just grey to me.
Just this grey blur. And yeah, I mean, hue, saturation, luminance are various things that you can use to control specific colors in your photography, and it can have a huge impact on how your image is seen when you consider the relationship between different colors and how strong they are. I suppose going through the HSL, or hue, saturation, and luminance, the different sliders or different things that you can control. The first one, hue, being the general shade of the color. So this is being able to move different colors towards their neighboring colors. For instance, you can make your greens a bit more yellow or a bit more blue. You can make your yellow's a bit more orange or a bit more green, and you can kind of shift where or what these colors are in your photo. And that can make a big difference when your color might not be as accurate as you want it to be, or it's just not looking as correct as you think it is. So you can have the ability to just switch these colors around a bit to make them more, or fit your photo a bit better, or the colors a bit better, or make the relationship between different colors match a bit better. And there's a whole bunch of information you can look at in terms of color theory. using complementary colors, triads of colors, opposing colors, all different types of color combinations that do work well together. So using very strong blues and very strong reds, using very warm colors such as oranges, yellows, and reds, or very cool colors, so your blues, magentas, and maybe a bit into the greens as well. So keeping to these different color themes can really improve your overall image appearance. And this can be controlled really well with your hue sliders to really make those fine adjustments. You've also got your saturation. So this is choosing the intensity of each color. So you might want to make your blues look very bright and vibrant, or stand out more and have very strong appearance in your image, or you might make them a bit more subdued if they're starting to overtake or overpower certain areas. You can dull them down a bit, but it doesn't change the actual color itself. It's just sort of removing a bit of it from certain areas. And saturation can be quite important for drawing attention to different areas of your photo. For instance, if you want a person wearing a red jacket to stand out in a very dull landscape scene, you can make the red a bit more saturated, and that'll really draw attention to that area around maybe some subdued greens or something, or a yellow jacket standing out from a really snowy or blue kind of area. So using saturation as a form of drawing the eye's attention to that specific spot. And this is controlled and from anywhere from being completely unsaturated, keeping the brightness and the color itself the same, to being just completely blown out and saturated, so a full color amount.
Adding saturation, those sort of things, is a great way of doing something. But you can also remove saturation as well. So, yes. I mean, obviously things like waterfalls, if you don't want blue water, which quite often happens with the white balance in the camera, it's easy to slide the slider one way and actually remove saturation as well. So I actually find more of a result, or I notice more of a result when I do that, removing something more so than adding it, in terms of being colorblind. But yeah, obviously it's, for me, something I notice quite a lot when moving, say, the luminance slider, is it's very easy to introduce pixelation into an image. Mm-hmm. So it deteriorates the quality quite a lot in a specific color set. So I notice that quite a lot, that if I've slide a slider too far, I'm actually very much deteriorating the quality of a specific color.
And that's, especially with the luminance, as you're saying, bringing sort of a pixelization look to the image, is that if there's any gradation between colors, going from, say, a sky from a bright blue to a cyan kind of color, if you just completely remove the luminance of the blue, you'll end up with patchiness between the cyan and the blue. So you kind of need to either not go too far with it, or move down the adjacent colors as well to have a more of a blended effect. So there is a relationship between all these colors, and it needs to be done either very subtly or in a very controlled manner. And it does help to be able to turn on and off the effect that you're doing to see how it's changed. Is sometimes if you are just moving it a little bit more and a little bit more, you won't notice how big of an effect it's had until you do actually see the before and after. So it's a good idea to constantly be going back and seeing what kind of changes you're making. And sometimes you might think that the color's right, and then you'll go to before and after and realize that you've just either made your yellows completely too fluorescent green, or you've blown out the saturation in your blues, and the blues kind of leaking into the clouds in the sky and things. So there is very controlled ways of doing this, but it can have huge impacts on your image just by using the hue, saturation, and luminance sliders.
Yeah, cool. Obviously there's quite a few colours there. I don't even know what the colour magenta is. I think people just make up colours sometimes, but quite often I'll actually desaturate the purples and magentas out of my images. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but it works for me in terms of the overall look and feel of my images as a whole.
I tend to do that. I mean, one thing it's doing, as you're saying, is to desaturate blues from water, especially waterfall scenes. I see a lot of good waterfall shots with nice lush green scenery, but then there's this really strong blue in the water, and it kind of detaches from how the image could look. And that may be just my opinion, but once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it, and you see all these strong saturated blue cyans and blues in water.
Yeah.
When you're at the waterfall, you're not seeing blues and everything. It doesn't sort of make sense. So and you're trying to make an image that looks, well, hopefully trying to make an image that looks as you saw it at the time and make it somewhat realistic. And I guess maybe people go through waterfall shots and be able to see all these blues in the water that they may not have noticed before because they haven't really looked for it.
Yeah, definitely.
But it is something to look out for.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, the camera's white balance kind of introduces those colours quite often in kind of darker scenes with a lot of green in particular. It, for some reason, likes to make water blue. I think the camera's colourblind maybe. It's colouring in blue where it shouldn't be. But yeah, so that's one thing I definitely do, and that's probably one of the major things that I do. And like green and yellow are so close together as well on the colour spectrum that quite often I find when I'm changing saturation levels, so for example within Lightroom you can actually click a little round wheel, hover over the specific region of an image you want to saturate, and you can modify that, and you can see which colours are actually on that particular area of the image. And more often than not, I find that it's yellow and green that are actually being impacted when I'm trying to saturate a green.
Well, this is something I always do as well, is if there's any greens in my shots, like trees and things, is that I will focus on the yellow channel. It's not, the greens are a very different kind of green, and you'll notice that if you are sort of playing around with these two. But if you want to make real effects on your green colors, or what you see as green on the screen, is to change the values of your yellow, because it will have much more of an impact than going to the greens. Unless they're really fluorescent kind of greens or closer to what might be seen as a blue-green, then the yellow is going to be much more effective.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing I definitely notice as well. So yeah, I mean, when would you change the hue as compared to saturation?
For instance, if sometimes when taking a photo for either white balance reasons or just the light at the time, and depending on the feel of an image that I'm trying to go for, I will change the hue of, say, the yellows to make leaves look a bit more green. They may look a bit too warm and dull just straight out of the camera. So moving it a bit towards the green side of the yellow can make them look a bit more lush and vibrant rather than more of a reddy yellow. And it's not in all photos, but it can make a big impact on just the feel of a waterfall or a forest scene to make it look a little more cool and lush and not so dry or lit and just warm. And it's all up to your own personal taste and things, but I found that moving the yellow slider a bit more to the green in waterfalls can help with that effect.
Why does the yellow slider have green on it? It doesn't make sense to me. Now you're just confusing me, man. Like, I just want to change my yellows, not my green. Man, that's doing my head in. I'm going cross-eyed.
Yeah, I know when you think that your camera's seen in red, green, and blue, you'd think changing to green would have more of an effect, but it's, the yellow slider is, I suppose, I don't know, trees are yellow or green and blue? Is that what makes yellow? No, it's green and red makes yellow. Yeah, because blue is the opposite. So, yeah, I don't know. Now I'm confusing myself, but
it's just some form of grey to me, I think. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, obviously those three things can have a massive impact on your image, so hue, saturation, and luminance. And again, I mean, I speak to a lot of people. Some people just simply are confused about what they do. I mean, saturation, as a general rule, is going to be the intensity of the colour. Hue is going to be the general shade of the colour, and luminance is going to be the brightness of the colour. So those three things combined are going to be what really kind of makes your image have its individual look and feel. So yeah, I mean, saturation is definitely probably the one that I feel gets used more than the others. I'm just guessing, but I mean, that would be, maybe we could poll our users, our listeners, and see what they use more. But yeah, I'm guessing the saturation is definitely the one that gets used more.
This is a very what a lot of people use to create a certain look to an image in terms of presets. So if you've seen someone who has a very signature kind of look to their photos, they've probably had a lot of adjustments in the hue, saturation, and luminance sliders to when they take photos. That means that this color gets shifted this way and that color gets shifted that way. So they'll change those colors to get a specific look to just about any photo they take. So they can use that preset, move all those sliders around, and it's already made their photo and their colors look very unique because they've played around with these color sliders. So that's, I guess, one area where those presets for specific looks come into play is in this HSL area. A massive thank you to George's Cameras on George Street in Sydney for sponsoring Project RAWcast. George's Cameras is always on the list of places to go when we visit Sydney. As a photographer, there's always something we need or want, and we know we can get it from George's Cameras. Or we just like to browse and check out all the cool gear that they've got. To support this show and our listeners, George's Cameras is giving away a $50 voucher every month to the winner of our Instagram hashtag competition. All you have to do is mention Project RAWcast in your caption and hashtag Project RAWcast. Tazigrammer and I will pick our favourite each month to share on our account and give the $50 George's Camera voucher to. Thanks again to George's Cameras for supporting Project RAWcast and all of our listeners.
Speaking of signature looks on photos, something that's blown up on Reddit recently is a father who photoshopped his baby into really dangerous situations. This is quite hilarious. I actually think it's quite funny. So this guy's kind of produced, I've seen 7 images of images where he's put his baby into danger. And we're talking like, so he's cooking, holding up a saucepan with a set of flames on an oven, and the baby is playing around with the knife block in the kitchen.
Yeah, holding a very sharp knife. Oh, don't know if it's sharp, but holding a big knife just there, just watching her dad cook. And the dad, who looks a lot like Heston Blumenfeld, is just giving his little girl a nice smile.
Yeah, another one is where the baby seems to be driving the car on a freeway or on a highway.
Yeah, this one's done really well. It's just sort of sitting back and letting his kid do the driving while he's just holding a cup of coffee. These look very real. And if you just you can imagine a photo like this going out into media and this shock media saying, look what this irresponsible father has done. You know, we're trying to track him down and fine him for letting his baby drive on the freeway. But like, they are all Photoshop, but they're really well done and very difficult to tell that they're not actual real photos, and he's not putting his daughter's life in any kind of danger.
A very similar set of images that we've found on 500px is by John Wilhelm. His handle is Horazio, or Horazio. These are amazing quality images, incredibly well done images, and a lot of them seem to kind of feature a young girl, which we're assuming is his daughter, kind of in really hilarious situations. One of them is sticking a knitting needle into a PowerPoint and getting an electric shock, and her hair's kind of, frizzed up all over the place. One's her diving or in the water and seemingly having a shark approaching her.
Another one just having a tiger resting over, or what's the one, like diving to catch a frisbee in her mouth. Yeah, there's some, and one kind of creepy one of a pregnant woman with a camera like kind of sticking out of her stomach a little bit, and he's got a little blower on it. But yeah, just really, really fantastic Photoshop skills to create very clever and just fun images.
Yeah, and there's some really high quality images here. Look, we'll definitely put some links up for our episode notes, so on our website, projectrawcast.com. But yeah, there's some really cool, really high quality images here, and again, kind of really good example of creativity of what people can do with Photoshop. You've had good success over the last week or so with some good creativity in Photoshop yourself, with an image that you posted on Instagram, which kind of went nuts. A lot of comments on it.
Yeah, I created an image just to sort of show you a little bit of an over-the-top amount of Photoshop that you can do to a scene, and people liked it. So I decided to share it and do a little tutorial on how I actually created it on my YouTube channel. So yeah, Photoshop is a lot of fun. You can have a lot of fun with it, and it's worth just going in there and having a play around and seeing what kind of creative images you can come up with.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it's one of the best images that I've seen you create. Very, very nice long exposure look. I'm calling it the Kieran Stone look. Now we could maybe try to make it a thing.
I have seen a couple of other people use it and like show me the photos that they've created, and yeah, it looks really good. And I like it, so I hope to see more of it in the future. But I am surprised that because it did get a lot of attention, that you didn't start claiming that you did it for me.
No, mate, I didn't. I definitely didn't do this. I think, is it the shot that I shot though, right? I took the photo. You just said it. No, definitely not. No, it's a really cool image, and obviously the creativity of what you can actually achieve with Photoshop is something that's really cool. I think a topic that we will definitely cover next episode maybe is, how far is too far with Photoshop. Probably another very divisive topic within the photography world. But yeah, the level of creativity that you can actually achieve once you are aware of what you can do. I think sometimes, quite often, knowing where to even start with Photoshop is the thing. But these two links that we'll put up with the babies and the young girl are definitely examples of what you can actually achieve with a bit of creativity and knowledge around the industry-leading image editing suite.
Mm. And we've got another controversial photo here as well it's angered quite a lot of people, especially because it was shared on the National Geographic or the Nat Geo Instagram account. And that's a photo of someone standing in the middle of railroad tracks. And it's a seemingly innocuous photo, just someone standing there. But there is, I guess, a very high danger level of being on train tracks and doing photography on active train lines and ones that aren't on private property or in disuse. But still, it's the promotion of doing photos like this that has angered so many people by Nat Geo sharing it.
Yeah, again, I think this is one of those ones. It's become controversial without really needing to be. I don't think Nat Geo really meant to kind of insult or harm anybody or, impact on anybody. They just saw a nice photo with some nice light and posted it on. But obviously, people being in dangerous or perceived dangerous situations is something that the general public is starting to crack down on with Instagram as a whole. Obviously, an account with nearly 75 million followers is going to have an impact on other people copying them. I mean, even yourself. Another example, we're talking, you have 38,000 followers now, and an image that you posted just recently of being in the cave on Great Ocean Road at the main 12 Apostles lookout was taken negatively by at least one tourism board.
Is this you like getting revenge for throwing you under the bus in like one of the earlier episodes? Now you're throwing me under the bus.
Mate, I think you're happily throwing yourself under the bus by posting these images. But look, this that's a perfect example as well. Should people be jumping into the cave at the Great Ocean Road and jumping over fences into the spot? I think people, obviously should be making up their own minds and not worrying about what other people necessarily do. But when you have an influential photography account or an influential social media account and people post images in certain positions in certain ways, other people are going to go and copy them. And I think this National Geographic example is an exact example of that, and that's why people have started quite a lot of people have complained about this one. The image is still up. We'll link to it again from our episode notes to go and have a look. I mean, Nat Geo didn't take it down because the image has got some great engagement as well. I mean, it was, current is 492,820 likes, and I can't see how many comments on the computer screen, but I'm going to be assuming there's several thousand there. I mean, it got them great engagement.
Yeah, I mean, you can never tell how safe someone was when taking this photo. Who knows, that train line may have been closed down just for this shoot, and you can't, I mean, I'm guessing it wasn't, but I mean, if you're going out there and taking photos, you really need to consider your surroundings and really understand just how safe or dangerous you're being, and don't just blindly follow other people just because you've seen it. I mean, it comes down to the whole thing of, if you saw this person jump off a bridge, would you go and do it? And it's like, the answer is no, you wouldn't just do it just because someone else did it. And you do need to take your own safety into consideration and in any situation that you're in. And the responsibility can't be on the person who took the original photo or who potentially influenced it. I mean, it's just stupid to just go around throwing the blame to people who aren't directly involved should some unfortunate accident actually happen.
Definitely, I think it's a good example, maybe pack mentality too here. I think a couple of people maybe complained and other people saw the comments and kind of complained as well. But look, I mean, that is another topic, and we've discussed it in the past about, if you have an influential photography account, whether you should be posting images of places you shouldn't be in, or not encouraging people to put themselves into dangerous situations. There's thousands and thousands of examples of it. People kind of hanging off rooftops or being in train tracks illegally, those sort of things. Should they be doing it? I think it all comes down to the individual person to decide whether they feel they need to go and copy other people's images in the first place. That's probably the way to look at that. People producing art, they're going to do it for their own personal purposes. I think, though, in some ways, you can be expected to be copied if you do have an influential account and you post an amazing image as well.
Yeah, but hopefully they are as safe as I know I was being when I go do things. I mean, that I can't be responsible for them, and these other photographers who go out and do their own things, they can't be responsible for what happens. I mean, I know you might have some kind of, you might want to consider what other people might do, but you can't let that stop you from living your own life as well. And as long as you're not directly harming yourself or anyone else with what you're doing, I don't know. Everyone's going to have their difference of opinions, but I'm still going to do what I think is safe and reasonable, and I'll share good photos.
What was your response to the request you had to take that down?
I pretty much just said, I was asked if I had any consideration for other people, and I just said no. Just those two letters, NO. I couldn't be bothered dealing with it. Don't attack me.
No, I think it's a fair response. It's a fair response.
I could have got into an argument. I had a lot of things I could have said going through my head, but it's just, I'm not going to get into it.
You arguing with somebody? Man, that'd be strange. So yes, go check out this Nat Geo image. I'd love to hear what you personally think about this yourselves. This is pretty innocent image, I think, and Nat Geo just taken something that's probably a reasonable image. It's not amazeballs, but it's a reasonable image, and it's garnered them quite a lot of engagement, and they have taken the stance to not take it down. So
I'd be questioning why it's on National Geographic. It's not. I don't really see the National Geographic sort of side of this, but I guess they do.
Did their account get hacked or something? I don't know. But yeah, it definitely doesn't suit their normal style of content. But anyway, moving along. Nothing to see here. Well, I've got a lot of work to go and catch up on now after this trip, and go and have a look at some images and kind of prepare for flying back up there for our Phillip Island workshop in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, looking forward to that. What do we need to do? I got to make sure my tripod's clean before then. I keep putting it off, but then I keep going to beaches and getting it dirty again. So I keep thinking, what's the point in cleaning it? It's just going to get dirty again.
Cool.
But yeah, I'll let you get to your thousands and thousands of images of sharks, and probably even more photos of Norsemen, and let you find out which ones are gems. And we'll keep an eye out for them on Instagram.
Cool. Well, I'm just about to go and delete all of the messages in my inbox currently now, awaiting for all of the messages to come through after the response to this episode. So I await those. And yeah, look, hopefully, as I say, I've given a little bit of education around some rather divisive topics here in the photography community, and hopefully the community as a whole can benefit from actually learning something.
Yeah, I think the main message is just focus on what you're doing and not what other people are doing.
Yes, that is time that you could be spending improving yourself. All right, I'm off. I'll chat with you later.
Excellent. All right, I'll catch you later.
See you, mate.